I need to tell someone about this before I lose my mind completely, so here goes. And I'm warning you now. This story doesn't have a neat ending tied up with a bow. It's messy and complicated and involves decisions no one should ever have to make. The ultrasound technician's name was Sarah. I remember because I'd seen her 3 times already during this pregnancy, and she was always chatty and warm, pointing out the baby's fingers and toes, making jokes about how active the little one was. But at my 20-week anatomy scan, when she moved the wand across my belly and the image appeared on the screen, her whole face changed. She went completely still, then pale. Then she put down the wand and said, "I need to get the doctor." "Is something wrong with the baby?" I asked, my heart immediately hammering. "Is there a problem?" Just, "Let me get Dr. Patterson, okay? I'll be right back." She practically ran out of the room, leaving me lying there with gel drying on my stomach, staring at the frozen image on the ultrasound screen. The baby looked fine to me. All the parts were there, moving normally. But what did I know? I wasn't a medical professional. My sister Claire had been texting me every hour for updates about this appointment. She and her husband Derek were probably sitting in their pristine living room right now, waiting to hear that everything was perfect with their miracle baby. The baby I was carrying for them because Claire's body had betrayed her 3 times. 3 devastating miscarriages that had left her hollow and broken. The baby that, according to what Dr. Patterson told me 15 minutes later, was biologically mine. "I don't understand," I said, for probably the 5th time, sitting up on the exam table while Tyler, my husband, held my hand so tight it hurt. "How is that possible? They did IVF. They implanted Claire's embryo. I signed all the papers." Dr. Patterson, a kind woman in her 50s who delivered both my own children, looked like she wanted to be anywhere but in that room. "Emma, the genetic markers we're seeing indicate that you're not just the gestational carrier. You're the biological mother, which means this embryo was created using your egg, not your sister's." "But I didn't donate eggs. I only agreed to carry their baby." "I know. That's why I've already called our clinic director and our legal team." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "This doesn't happen by accident, Emma. Someone would have had to deliberately substitute your biological material for your sister's." The room tilted. Tyler caught me before I actually fell off the exam table. "You're saying someone switched the embryos?" Tyler's voice was dangerous. "Someone at the clinic? Or someone who had access to the samples before they reached us?" Dr. Patterson pulled up my file on her computer. "The embryo transfer was performed 6 months ago. According to our records, the sample was delivered directly from your sister's fertility specialist, Dr. Monroe, at Pacific Reproductive Center. Everything appeared to be in order." My brain was moving too slowly, trying to process information that didn't make sense. "So what are you saying? That my sister's doctor switched the embryos?" "I'm saying that somewhere in the chain of custody, your genetic material was used instead of your sister's. And Emma?" Dr. Patterson's voice was gentle but firm. "Given that this would require your eggs, which we don't have on record anywhere, someone would have had to harvest them from you. When was the last time you had any medical procedures? Any surgeries? Anything involving anesthesia?" I thought back over the past year. The only thing that came to mind was, oh God, the appendicitis, I whispered. 8 months ago, I had emergency surgery to remove my appendix. Dr. Patterson's expression told me she was thinking the same thing I was. "Where did you have that surgery?" "Pacific Medical Center. Derek arranged everything. He said his health insurance would cover it since I didn't have good coverage, and Claire insisted I go to the best hospital." My voice was shaking now. "He was there the whole time. He talked to all the doctors. He handled all the paperwork." Tyler stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Are you telling me that son of a bitch harvested my wife's eggs during her appendix surgery? without her knowledge or consent? I'm saying we need to investigate what happened, and we need to do it immediately. Dr. Patterson was already typing. This is a serious violation of medical ethics and possibly criminal. Emma, I need your permission to contact the hospital and request your surgical records from that procedure. I nodded, unable to speak. My hand instinctively went to my stomach, to the small bump that was just starting to show. The baby kicked, like it knew we were talking about it. This baby wasn't Claire's miracle. It was mine. My egg, my body, my DNA. And if Dr. Patterson was right, Derek had orchestrated the whole thing without telling anyone. Not me, not Claire, probably not even the doctors who'd actually performed the procedures. He'd stolen my genetic material and used it to create a child he and Claire thought was theirs. Does my sister know? I asked quietly. Does Claire know that this baby is mine? No one knows except the people in this room, and Sarah, the ultrasound tech, who's been instructed not to discuss this with anyone. Dr. Patterson's eyes were full of sympathy. Emma, this is your decision. You're the patient, and this is your medical information. We can't disclose anything to your sister without your explicit consent. But she thinks this baby is hers. She's been planning the nursery, buying clothes, telling everyone that her miracle finally happened. I felt tears burning my eyes. What am I supposed to do? Let her keep believing a lie? Tyler pulled me against his chest. We're going to figure this out, Em. But first, we need to know for sure what happened and who's responsible. Dr. Patterson printed out several documents and handed them to us. I'm going to start an official inquiry. In the meantime, I want you to think very carefully about your next steps. This baby is legally complicated. You signed a surrogacy contract, but if the terms of that contract were violated, if you were deceived about the nature of the pregnancy, then the legal standing changes significantly. We left the clinic in a daze. Tyler drove us home in complete silence while I stared out the window, one hand on my stomach, feeling the baby move. My baby. Not Claire's baby. Mine. How was I supposed to tell my sister that the miracle she'd been praying for was actually based on a lie? How was I supposed to look Derek in the eye knowing what he'd done? And how was I supposed to carry this baby for 4 more months, feeling it grow inside me, and then hand it over to them? When we got home, our 2 kids, Mason and Lily, were being watched by our neighbor. Mason was 7, Lily was 5, and they both ran up excited to hear about their cousin. Did you see the baby? Lily asked, bouncing on her toes. Is it a boy or a girl? Aunt Claire said we could help pick out toys. I forced a smile and told them the baby looked healthy, that we'd know the gender soon. I didn't tell them that their little cousin was actually their sibling. I didn't tell them that their lives were about to get incredibly complicated. After we put the kids to bed, Tyler and I sat at our kitchen table with the ultrasound photos spread out in front of us. Photos of my baby. The baby I'd agreed to carry for my sister, not realizing I'd be carrying my own child. We have to tell her, Tyler said quietly. Claire deserves to know the truth. And what about Derek? If he did this deliberately, what does that mean? What was he thinking? Tyler's jaw tightened. I know exactly what he was thinking. He was thinking that Claire wanted a baby so desperately she'd accept anything, and you needed money so badly you'd agree to anything. He manipulated both of you. He was right about the money. That was the whole reason I'd agreed to be a surrogate in the first place. 6 months ago, Tyler's construction company had gone under. We'd lost everything. Our savings, our retirement, nearly our house. We were drowning in debt with 2 kids to feed and no way out. When Claire approached me about surrogacy, offering $60,000 plus all medical expenses covered, it felt like a life raft. $60,000 would save our house, pay off our credit cards, give us breathing room to rebuild, and I'd be helping my sister finally have the family she'd dreamed of. It seemed like the perfect solution, except Now I knew there was nothing perfect about it. Derek had turned my desperate situation into an opportunity to get what he wanted, using my body without my real consent. And Claire was caught in the middle, thinking she was finally going to be a mother. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. How did the ultrasound go? I've been on pins and needles all day. Is everything okay? I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. What was I supposed to say? That everything was fine? That her miracle baby was healthy and perfect and she shouldn't worry about a thing? Or should I tell her the truth right now, via text message, and shatter her world before I'd even figured out what to do next? I turned off my phone and put it face down on the table. I need time, I told Tyler. I need to figure out what actually happened before I say anything to Claire. If I tell her now, and I'm wrong somehow, if there's some explanation we're missing, I'll have destroyed her for nothing. And if you're right, then I'll have destroyed her anyway. I looked down at my stomach, at the small curve that held so many secrets. But at least I'll know exactly what I'm destroying her with. Dr. Patterson called me 3 days later. I was sitting in our backyard watching Mason and Lily play on their swing set, trying to pretend my entire life wasn't imploding, when her name appeared on my caller ID. Emma, I've reviewed the records from your appendectomy. Her voice was tight, professional, the voice of someone delivering very bad news. You need to come into my office, and you should bring a lawyer. We met the next morning. Tyler took the day off work, and we sat across from Dr. Patterson while she laid out documents like evidence at a crime scene. Your appendix surgery was performed by Dr. Richard Chen, a well-respected surgeon at Pacific Medical Center. The surgery itself was routine and appropriate. She pulled out a highlighted section. But here's where it gets complicated. The anesthesiologist on your case was Dr. Marcus Reed. He's also on staff at Pacific Reproductive Center, where your sister underwent her IVF treatments. That's a coincidence, Tyler said. But his voice said he knew it wasn't. It gets worse. I contacted Pacific Medical Center to request your full surgical records, including any additional procedures or tests performed during your surgery. They initially told me that everything was standard, but when I pushed and specifically asked about any reproductive procedures, they went silent and referred me to their legal department. Dr. Patterson pulled out another document. Emma, do you remember signing a consent form the morning of your surgery? You were in significant pain from the appendicitis, and the forms were probably just handed to you in a rush. I did remember. Barely. I'd been in agony, convinced my appendix was about to rupture, and Derek had been the one helping me through the paperwork while Tyler was trying to find someone to watch the kids. Derek had pointed to where I needed to sign, told me it was all standard surgical consent. I'd signed everything without reading it. One of those forms, Dr. Patterson continued, was a consent for exploratory reproductive assessment and oocyte preservation due to identified endometriosis risks. It's buried in technical language, but essentially, you signed a form giving permission for them to harvest your eggs. The room spun. But I don't have endometriosis. No, you don't. The form claims it was a preventive measure based on family history and identified risk factors during surgical visualization. It's complete fabrication, but it provided legal cover for what they did. Tyler's face was red with rage. So Derek had a doctor at the fertility clinic Moonlight as her anesthesiologist, forged a medical justification for harvesting her eggs, and tricked her into signing consent while she was in pain and terrified. That's what it looks like, yes. Dr. Patterson pulled out yet another document. And here's the embryo creation record from Pacific Reproductive Center. 6 eggs were retrieved during your appendix surgery. They were fertilized using Derek's sperm, not artificial insemination, direct ICI injection, and created 6 embryos. 1 was implanted in you 6 months ago. The other 5 are still frozen at the clinic. I couldn't breathe. Derek's sperm, not donor sperm. Derek is the biological father. Yes. So this baby, I put my hand on my stomach, feeling the now familiar flutter of movement. This baby is mine and Derek's, not Claire's at all. The implications crashed over me like a wave. My brother-in-law had used my body to create his biological child without my knowledge or real consent. He'd manipulated everything. My emergency surgery, the surrogacy agreement, probably even Claire's desperation to get what he wanted. Why would he do this? I whispered. If he wanted biological children that badly, why not tell Claire they should use a donor egg? Why go through all of this? Dr. Patterson's expression was grim. I can't speak to his motivations. But Emma, there's something else you need to know. I pulled Claire's medical records. She'd given me permission as her physician months ago. Her miscarriages weren't due to egg quality issues. They were due to uterine abnormalities that made it nearly impossible for her to carry a pregnancy to term. She was a candidate for surrogacy, absolutely. But there was never any indication that her eggs weren't viable. So he lied to her too, Tyler said. He told her the problem was her eggs when it wasn't. Without seeing exactly what he told her, I can't confirm that. But yes, it appears that way. I stood up abruptly, pacing Dr. Patterson's small office. I don't understand. What was his endgame? Eventually, someone was going to notice that this baby looks like me, not Claire. DNA tests exist. The truth was always going to come out. Maybe he thought he could control the narrative, Tyler suggested darkly. Or maybe he didn't think that far ahead. Maybe he just wanted a biological child and saw an opportunity. My phone, which I'd been ignoring for days, buzzed with another text from Claire. I'd told her I had a stomach bug and couldn't see her, that I just needed a few days to rest. She'd been sending concerned messages, offering to bring me soup, asking if the baby was okay. The baby was fine. It was everything else that was falling apart. What are my options? I asked Dr. Patterson. Legally, what can I do? That depends on what you want to do. The surrogacy contract you signed is likely invalid since it was based on fraud and misrepresentation. You could terminate your agreement and assert parental rights over this child. You could pursue criminal charges against Derek and possibly Dr. Reed for unauthorized medical procedures. You could sue for damages. She paused. Or you could tell your sister the truth and let her decide what she wants to do. And if I just kept quiet, finished the pregnancy and handed the baby over like we planned? Dr. Patterson's voice was gentle but firm. Emma, this is your child. Biologically, legally, in every way that matters. If you give this baby to Claire and Derek without telling her the truth, you're participating in the deception. And someday, that truth will come out. DNA tests, medical records, family resemblance, something will reveal it. And when it does, it will destroy your relationship with your sister and potentially traumatize this child. She was right. I knew she was right. But the thought of telling Claire, of watching her face when she realized her miracle baby was a lie, made me physically ill. Tyler drove me home in silence again. It was becoming our pattern. Devastating news followed by silent car rides where we both tried to process the unprocessable. When we got home, there was a car in our driveway. Claire's white Mercedes. Shit, Tyler muttered. Do you want me to tell her you're still sick? But before I could answer, Claire came out of our front door. She'd been waiting on the porch. She looked worried and tired, and when she saw me, her face lit up with relief. Emma, thank God. I've been so worried. You weren't answering my texts. And I thought maybe something was wrong with the baby. She hurried down the steps and pulled me into a hug. Are you okay? Is everything okay? Over her shoulder, I caught Tyler's eye. He gave me a small nod. Your choice. I pulled back from the hug and looked at my sister. Really looked at her. The dark circles under her eyes from too many sleepless nights after each miscarriage. The way she instinctively put a hand on my stomach, like she could feel her baby through my skin. the hope and love and desperation all mixed together in her expression. "Claire," I said quietly, "we need to talk." We sat in my living room, me, Tyler, and Claire, with a pot of tea nobody was drinking getting cold on the coffee table between us. I'd asked Tyler to take Mason and Lily to his mother's house. Whatever was about to happen, our kids didn't need to witness it. "You're scaring me," Claire said, her hands wrapped around her untouched teacup. "What's going on? Is there something wrong with the baby?" "The baby is healthy," I said, and watched relief flood her face. Then I added, "But there's something you need to know about the pregnancy." I told her everything: the ultrasound, the genetic markers, Dr. Patterson's investigation, the appendix surgery and the consent form buried in medical jargon, the harvested eggs, Derek's sperm, all of it. Claire's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, shock, denial, and finally, horrible understanding. "No," she whispered. "No, that's not possible. Derek wouldn't. We used my eggs. Dr. Monroe said we used my eggs." Dr. Monroe was lied to, or he was part of it. I don't know which yet. I pulled out the documents Dr. Patterson had given me. "But these are the records. This baby shares my DNA, not yours. Derek is the biological father, and I'm the biological mother." Claire's hands were shaking so badly she had to set down her teacup. "But why? Why would Derek do this?" "I don't know. But Claire, there's more." I hated what I was about to tell her, hated watching her world crumble in real time. "According to Dr. Patterson, your miscarriages weren't because of egg quality issues. Your eggs are fine. The problem is your uterus. Derek had to have known that, which means he lied to you about why we needed to use donor eggs." "We didn't use donor eggs," Claire said faintly. "We used mine. That's what he told me. That's what all the paperwork said." "The paperwork was falsified. Or the samples were switched. But Claire, the baby I'm carrying isn't yours. It's mine." She stood up abruptly, stumbling backward like I'd physically pushed her. "I need to talk to Derek. Right now. There has to be an explanation. Maybe the lab made a mistake. Maybe the genetic test was wrong." "It wasn't wrong. You don't know that. You're not a doctor." Her voice was rising, panic setting in. "Maybe you're the one who made a mistake. Maybe you switched the records or—" "Claire, stop." I stood too, reached for her hands, but she pulled away. "I know this is devastating. I know you don't want it to be true, but it is true, and we need to figure out what to do about it." "What to do?" Claire's laugh was broken, hysterical. "What is there to do? You're carrying my baby, my miracle baby, the baby I've been praying for, that I've spent 2 years preparing for. You're not taking that away from me. It's not your baby, Claire. It's mine." The words hung in the air between us, ugly and undeniable. Claire's face crumpled. "No. No, Emma, please. You can't do this to me. We had an agreement. You signed a contract." "A contract based on lies," Tyler interjected firmly. "A contract that said Emma would carry your biological child, not her own. That contract is void." "I don't care about contracts or biology or any of it." Claire was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I've been talking to this baby every day. I've been playing it music. I've picked out names. This is my child." "And it's also Emma's child," Tyler said. "Which she didn't agree to, which she didn't consent to create. Your husband used her body to make a baby without her knowledge." Claire turned on him. "You just want the money, don't you? You want to keep the baby so you don't have to pay back the surrogacy fee. This is about money. This is about the fact that your husband committed reproductive coercion," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "This is about the fact that he violated my body. This is about consent and truth, and the fact that everything about this pregnancy is based on a lie. Where's Derek? Tyler asked suddenly. Does he know you're here? Claire's expression shifted, became guarded. He's at work. Call him. Tell him to come here. Now. I'm not. Call him, Claire. We need to hear his explanation before we decide what to do next. Claire pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called Derek. The conversation was brief and tense. 20 minutes later, his black BMW pulled into our driveway. Derek walked into our living room looking like he'd just come from a business meeting. Expensive suit, perfect hair, confident stride. But when he saw all three of us sitting there, documents spread across the coffee table, his confidence faltered. What's going on? He asked carefully. Sit down, Derek, I said. We need to talk about the baby. He sat, but his body language was defensive. Is there a problem with the pregnancy? The problem, Tyler said coldly, is that you harvested Emma's eggs without her real consent, used your sperm to create embryos, and implanted one in her, while telling both her and your wife that you were using Claire's eggs. The color drained from Derek's face. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to us. Claire's voice cracked. Emma has the medical records, the genetic tests, everything. Just tell me the truth. Did you do this? Derek looked at his wife, and something in his expression changed. The denial faded, replaced by something harder. Calculation. Yes, he said finally. I did it. Claire made a sound like she'd been punched. Why? I asked, my voice shaking. Why would you do this to us? Derek leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. Because I wanted a biological child. Is that so wrong? I wanted a son or daughter who shared my DNA, who looked like me, who carried my genetics into the future. Every man wants that. But I wanted that too, Claire whispered. I wanted our biological child. Your eggs weren't working, Claire. Derek's voice was matter-of-fact, cruel in its directness. 3 miscarriages, 3 failures. The doctors said there was no guarantee your eggs would ever result in a viable pregnancy. That's not true, I interrupted. Dr. Patterson said Claire's eggs were fine. The problem was her uterus, not her eggs. Derek's jaw tightened. The problem was that I wanted a guaranteed outcome. Using donor eggs meant starting over with an unknown genetic profile. But Emma... He looked at me, and I felt sick. Emma has good genetics. Healthy kids, easy pregnancies, and she needed money. It was a perfect situation. You used me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You violated my body. You created a child with my eggs without my consent. You signed the consent form. You tricked me. I was in pain, terrified, and you buried it in legal language I couldn't possibly understand in that state. A signature is a signature. Derek's voice was cold now, lawyer-like. You consented to the egg retrieval. You consented to the surrogacy. Everything was legal. Tyler stood up so fast his chair fell backward. You son of a bitch. You know damn well that consent obtained through deception isn't real consent. Tyler, sit down, Derek said dismissively. Let's all stay calm and figure this out like adults. Adults? Claire's voice was rising again. Adults don't steal their wife's sister's eggs and lie about it for 6 months. Adults don't manipulate and deceive the people who trust them. I did this for us, Claire. So we could have a family? No. Claire was standing now too, backing away from her husband like he was a stranger. No. You did this for yourself. You didn't care about me or Emma or what either of us wanted. You just cared about getting your genetic legacy, no matter who you had to hurt to get it. Derek's mask finally cracked. Damn right I cared about it. Do you know what it's like to watch all my friends have kids while we went through failure after failure? Do you know what it's like to wonder if your genetics will just end with you? So you stole mine, I shouted. You used my body like it was just a resource for you to exploit. I gave you $60,000. That wasn't payment for creating your biological child. That was payment for carrying Claire's baby. There's a difference, and you know it. We were all standing now, shouting, years of family dinners and holidays and forced politeness finally exploding into raw honesty. What happens now? Claire asked, looking between me and her husband. What happens to the baby? Derek's expression hardened. The baby is ours. We have a contract. The contract is void, Tyler said. Then we'll see what a judge says. I have the best lawyers in the state. You have nothing. We have the truth, I said quietly. And I have parental rights to my own biological child. No judge in the country is going to force me to give up my baby to the man who violated me. Derek's face turned ugly. You want a war, Emma? I'll bury you. I'll make sure you never see a penny of that surrogacy money. I'll sue you for breach of contract. I'll destroy Tyler's credit even further. I'll make your life hell. Get out of my house, Tyler said, his voice deadly calm. Right now. Before I do something we'll all regret. Derek looked at Claire, waiting for her to defend him, to take his side. But Claire just stared at him like she'd never seen him before. Get out, she whispered. I can't even look at you right now. Derek grabbed his keys and walked out without another word, slamming the door behind him. The three of us stood in the wreckage of what used to be our family. The next 2 months were a legal nightmare. Derek did exactly what he'd threatened. Hired expensive lawyers, filed breach of contract suits, contested my parental rights. He tried to paint me as an unstable woman who'd gotten cold feet about surrogacy and was now inventing lies to get out of her obligations. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated the paper trail. Dr. Warsaw Patterson testified about the genetic testing and the falsified medical records. The hospital launched an internal investigation that revealed Dr. Reed, the anesthesiologist, had been receiving payments from Derek for consulting services. Other women came forward, 2 other surrogates at Pacific Reproductive Center who'd experienced complications with their pregnancies that, in retrospect, seemed suspicious. The medical board stripped Dr. Reed of his license. Pacific Reproductive Center settled out of court with multiple plaintiffs, and Derek's case against me fell apart when my lawyer presented evidence of reproductive coercion and medical fraud. Claire filed for divorce 3 weeks after the confrontation in my living room. She came over one afternoon in her 8th month of waiting, because even though the pregnancy wasn't biologically hers, she'd been preparing for this baby for so long that she couldn't just shut off her feelings. We sat in the same living room where everything had exploded, but this time, there was tea that we actually drank. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, Claire said quietly, staring at my now obvious belly. I know that baby isn't mine. I understand the biology, but I still feel like it's mine, you know? I've been connected to this pregnancy from the beginning. I know, I said. And I'm so sorry, Claire. I'm sorry Derek did this to you. To both of us. It's not your fault. She wiped at her eyes. I've been going to therapy, trying to process everything. And my therapist asked me something that I keep thinking about. She asked me if I would have wanted this baby if I'd known the truth from the start. What did you say? I said no, because it wouldn't have been ethical. It wouldn't have been right. Claire looked up at me. But that doesn't make it hurt any less. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Claire asked the question I'd been dreading. What are you going to do? When the baby comes? I put my hand on my stomach, feeling the strong kicks of a baby who is almost ready to meet the world. I'm keeping her. It's a girl, by the way. Dr. Patterson told me last week. A girl, Claire repeated softly, and I saw the grief pass across her face. That's what I'd hoped for. Claire, I want you to know, I don't want this to destroy our relationship. You're my sister. I love you. None of this was supposed to happen this way. I know. She reached across and put her hand over mine, over the baby. Our baby. My baby. It was complicated. Can I ask you something? And will you be honest? Always. If Derek hadn't lied, if you'd known from the beginning that you'd be carrying your own biological child, would you have said yes? Would you have done it for me? I thought about it carefully. No, I wouldn't have. Not because I don't love you, but because I couldn't carry my own baby for 9 months and then give it away. That's asking too much. Even for family. I know. That's why he lied. Claire pulled her hand back, wiped her eyes again. He knew neither of us would have agreed if we'd known the truth. So he took away our choice. He did. And I hate him for it. So do I. 3 weeks later, I went into labor at 38 weeks. Tyler rushed me to the hospital and Dr. Patterson delivered my daughter, my third child, though I'd only planned on having two, at 3:47 in the morning. She was beautiful. Perfect. She had Tyler's nose and my eyes and a full head of dark hair. When the nurse placed her in my arms, I felt an overwhelming surge of love mixed with grief for how complicated her story would always be. Claire had asked if she could be there for the birth. I'd said yes, even though Tyler was worried it would be too painful for her. But when my daughter took her first breath and let out her first cry, Claire was standing beside my hospital bed, tears streaming down her face. "She's perfect," Claire whispered. "Do you want to hold her?" I asked, and saw Tyler's surprised expression. Claire hesitated, then nodded. I handed her my daughter, and watched my sister cradle the baby she'd thought would be hers. "I'm going to love you," Claire told the baby softly. "I'm going to be the best aunt in the world. I'm going to spoil you and teach you things and always be there when you need me. But Emma is your mama. Do you understand? Emma is your mama, and she fought so hard for you." She handed the baby back to me, kissed my forehead, and left the room. We named our daughter Sophie Grace. Grace for the grandmother she'd never meet, and Sophie because it meant wisdom. And God knew she was going to need wisdom to navigate the complicated family she'd been born into. The legal aftermath took another 6 months. Derek's parental rights were terminated after I filed for full custody and presented evidence of his fraud and coercion. He was ordered to pay restitution but no child support. I didn't want anything from him, didn't want any tie that would give him an excuse to be part of Sophie's life. Claire and I went to family therapy together. It wasn't easy. There were sessions where we both cried, where old resentments and new wounds got picked open and examined. But slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding our relationship. She divorced Derek and moved into a smaller apartment across town. She started dating someone new, a woman named Rachel who worked as a teacher and had no interest in having biological children. Last I heard, they were talking about adoption. As for me and Tyler, we adjusted to being a family of 5. Mason and Lily adored their baby sister and never questioned the complicated circumstances of her birth. To them, she was just Sophie, the baby who'd taken forever to arrive and was finally here. But sometimes, late at night when I was feeding Sophie, I thought about what Derek had stolen from all of us. Not just my eggs or my bodily autonomy, though those violations were real and lasting. But he'd stolen the simple joy of pregnancy, the uncomplicated love between sisters, the ability to look at my daughter without remembering how she came into the world. He'd taken something pure, Claire's desire for a child, my willingness to help my sister, and twisted it into something dark and manipulative and cruel. And we'd all have to live with the consequences forever. But here's what I learned through all of this. Your body is yours. Your choices are yours. And anyone who tries to take that away from you, no matter their reasons or justifications, is committing a violation that no amount of money or good intentions can excuse. I also learned that love is more complicated than biology. Claire wasn't Sophie's biological mother, but she loved her fiercely anyway. Tyler wasn't genetically related to the drama with Derek, but he stood beside me through every court hearing and therapy session. And Sophie. Sophie was created through deception, but she was innocent of all of it, deserving of love and protection regardless of how she came into this world. My daughter is 3 years old now. She doesn't know the full story of her birth yet, but someday we'll tell her. We'll tell her that sometimes adults make terrible choices that affect innocent people. We'll tell her that her Aunt Claire loves her even though their relationship is complicated. We'll tell her that her mama fought for her right to exist authentically, even when it was hard and messy and painful. And we'll tell her that no one has the right to use another person's body without their full, informed, uncoerced consent. Not for a baby. Not for anything. If you're reading this and you're considering surrogacy, please make sure you understand every document you sign. Make sure you trust the people involved. Make sure your medical care is separate from the intended parent's control. And if something feels wrong, speak up. You're not being dramatic or paranoid. You're protecting yourself. To the women who've experienced reproductive coercion in any form, whether it's forced pregnancy, stolen eggs, birth control sabotage, or any other violation of your bodily autonomy, I see you. What happened to you wasn't your fault, and you deserve justice, healing, and the freedom to decide what happens to your own body. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have kept the baby or honored the contract despite the deception? Share your thoughts in the comments and follow this page for more stories about women reclaiming their power.